sports note for Wednesday, October 16th, and the college football program in Columbus doesn't have a time management problem. They don't have a scheduling problem. They don't have a payroll problem with one of the inaugural seasons of NIL. They've got a Ryan Day problem, which actually means they've got multiple issues out of what I've just named. As we all know and saw in one of the better games of the college football season already, easily the tightest amongst top three matchups, Oregon held off Ohio State for a 32-31 win on Saturday night in Eugene at Autzen Stadium in front of 61,000 fans. Ohio State was ranked second in the country, was getting some first place votes. Oregon was ranked third. They were not getting those votes. And now, flash forward a week, and Oregon's now picked up a handful of votes, and Texas runs Oklahoma off the field in the Red River Shootout and picks up the majority of the first place votes. And there's a lot of people already thinking that Texas is the team to beat, and they're very, very hard-pressed to disagree with that, especially with how they've looked already this season. But make no mistake about it, Ohio State, as much as I cannot stand the program, and a lot of people are going to be calling me a hater, you are correct, but there's a difference between being a hater and being a realist. And I don't live watching college football through, some people may call rose-colored glasses. Unfortunately, for those elitists that follow that program, they're more so watching out of scarlet and gray glasses. It's still red, and for somebody colorblind like me, it's not, 6 1/2 dozen of the other. The problem with Buckeye fans and living in Cleveland here, where there's no major college program that's great enough locally, where Akron and Kent State are middle of the packs, they're mid majors in really any sport that they're a part of, they start to latch on to Ohio State, and that's where a lot of the elitist mentality comes from, thinking that the program can do no wrong. Oftentimes, they're so starved for a winner in this town in football, especially with as abysmal as the Browns have been, since they returned in 1999, except for a handful of seasons, they've latched on to Ohio State and are basically going to turn a blind eye to everything the program really does wrong, with basically with no regard towards the fact that they're not infallible. The problem right now with that starts at the top. Their football coach, Ryan Day, is 1-7 against teams in the top 5 after that loss this week. He's 61-9 overall. So out of those 9 losses, 7 of them have come against top 5 teams. He has no national championships. He's got a couple of Big Ten titles at the outset. Say whatever you want about the controversy with Michigan. He's lost back-to-back games against them. He's got, and that one win over a top 5 program was in the college football playoff against Clemson, and then the Buckeyes go out and proceed to get run off the field the very next week by Alabama. The Buckeyes have a $20 million NIL payroll this year. It's the largest in the country. They play, some might call it Little Sisters of the Poor, some might call it Mickey Mouse, some might call it Cupcake. Either way, it means that their out-of-conference schedule absolutely sucks. And there's no other way to say that. Every other team in the top 5, and realistically most of the teams in the top 10, if not the top 25 altogether, have played an out-of-conference game against another team in a power conference this year. And you can't fault Dave for that. You could certainly fault the university where they're making these charitable donations at this particular point because that's all they are. But whereas Clemson, who's now back in the top 10 after getting went out in the opening game of the season and got run off the field by Georgia. And then Georgia loses to Alabama. And then Alabama goes down to Vanderbilt and gets beat. And realistically, if you think about it, with his historically bad as historically great as Ohio State's been in the last 25 years, Vanderbilt has been a historic afterthought. And they're really 2 or 3 plays away from being 6-0 in the country and having the best resume in the country. I saw that on a meme earlier today, scrolling through Facebook for the first time in about 3 or 4 days, and I'm like, you know what? As a Mizzou fan, that's absolutely correct because they've got the right mentality going forward. Nobody is infallible, and certainly Ryan Day is not. It doesn't matter how many games you win and how large you win, especially if you won your first 2 games scoring over 100 points and only giving up 6. You beat 2 teams in the MAC, and they weren't even decent teams. They were bottom-end teams that are going to have to struggle to get themselves bowl eligible this year. They go out and they beat an Iowa team who had put up 40 the week before for the first time in probably our lifetimes, it seems, because that's not what Iowa typically does. And then you figure, okay, let's actually see what they do against a competitive team, especially one who's going to be challenging them for the Big Ten championship this year, because we know that Michigan is certainly not at this point with 2 losses already on their schedule. And not only kudos to whoever makes the schedule with Ohio State for scheduling all of these marshmallow games, and yet another another comparison at that point, but scheduling all these marshmallow games before they jump into Big Ten play, but also scheduling it to where out of their 12 games in their regular season schedule, only 4 of them are on the road. So you have to figure the home cooking is going to come into that at some point. Let's see what happens when they go on the road against a team that's going to challenge them and going to push them. First drive of the game, we actually see Ohio State throw the ball down the field here, and the first issue that I have with this is that quarterback Will Howard, the transfer from Kansas State, throws downfield on a 1st and 10 at their own 47, and he's looking for Will Kamarick. Seemingly hits him for 32 yards down to the Oregon 21, and immediately the Oregon defender comes up with the ball, and they're thinking, okay, he wrestled it away after Kamarick hit the ground. Every other replay that they showed was that Kamarick never had possession of the ball really at any point, and the ball was ripped away by linebacker Jeffrey Bassa of Oregon, who had dropped into coverage at this point. So this was not Day's call. It was actually the only reason why Ohio State scored a couple of plays later was offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, who we all know his track record between, formerly being at Oregon, actually that was Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. But big ups on Day trying to actually get Kelly in there. But there's also, you have to think that eventually Ryan Day is going to go Ryan Day. So Ohio State goes down, scores on the first drive of the game, early 7-0 lead. Oregon goes down, ties the game up. Dan Lanning decides to gamble a little bit, which we all know that he likes to do, but he also does it a lot smarter than people do. He decides to go for 2. Misses, points come out, he left a point on the board, so it's 7-6. Game goes back and forth. Oregon's got the lead late. And then Ryan Day proceeds again to go Ryan Day. Ryan Day manages to clock probably worse than any coach in college football, regardless of whether they're Division 1A, 2, 3, whatever. NAIA, NAIA at this particular point doesn't even matter. I honestly think in film study, for every game through the rest of the season, what they need to do is they need to intersplice segments from the big comfy couch so Ryan Day can actually learn how to tell time, because it was his decision making that let up anywhere between 15 and 30 seconds roll off the clock with Ohio State's final drive of the game, and also putting, not to completely be infallible here, Will Howard slides down well short of a first down with no time left, and Ohio State still got a timeout in the bag. It would have it was going to be short of a first down, so the clock would not have stopped, but Ohio State would have actually, had he been able to get down in time, would have also been able to would have been able to run a timeout and then try and actually get their kicker on for a game-winning score. But the final play is all on Will Howard, but you also have to link that back to Ryan Day, whose horrific clock management meant that the final play was only going to be with 6 seconds left, and then Howard's got to take off to be able to try and get them closer and in the center of the field, knowing he's got to get down fast and could not get down fast enough. So with the Buckeyes, they lose 26 players last year out of the transfer protocol. They only bring in 10. Now, granted, Will Howard was one of them. Quinshon Junkins, the star tailback from Mississippi, who started the season at number 6 in the country themselves and has now had a couple of losses, fell out, got themselves back in the top 25. The Buckeyes, I'm not going to take away from the fact that they are a very loaded team. They are the best team that money can buy in college football right now. But the problem is you can have the greatest team in the world, and if the guy at the helm cannot make the proper decisions that they need to, which Ryan Day has shown time and time and time again, whether it was against Jim Harbaugh, whether it was against Sharon Moore after Harbaugh got suspended for that game last year, and flat out outcoached by your Sabans, your Dabo Sweeneys, your Kirby Smart down in Georgia. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they actually met up in the playoff if he got out coached by somebody like DeBoer, who replaced Saban down in Alabama. When you look at Ryan Day, you look at, he's won a lot of games. He has not lost very many. The problem is he's lost all the games that they need to be able to get them to call themselves an elite program. Finishing in the top 5 every year is great, except last year where they finished in the top 10 because they lose to Michigan. Half the team basically quits at that point, and they have and he can't even coach his guys up to be able to go out and win the Cotton Bowl against my Mizzou Tigers. They scored 3 points in the first quarter and only ended up with a little over 200 yards the entire rest of the game. So you have to think that in not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, the Buckeyes head to Happy Valley, and they're going to take on Penn State, and that's going to be another top 5 matchup. So right now, Penn State's sitting at 3, the Buckeyes are sitting right behind at 4. So this would actually mark, twice this season, Ohio, and twice in the span of in less than a month, that they're going to be in the top 5 going against another top 5 team. Name the last time that's happened. So if Ohio State goes into Happy Valley and loses, I don't see a scenario at this point where they're going to need a lot of dominoes to fall to get themselves back into the picture to be able to play for the Big Ten title. But I also don't see, with the remainder of their schedule remaining, that Michigan's not going to be what they were. The Buckeyes are probably going to roll in that game, but the Buckeyes would certainly not have the resume because of Ryan Day not getting his team coached up properly to be able to get an at-large bid. And I could see with even the expanded tournament where they want to let a lot of teams in, so you've got a lot more blue bloods, that the Buckeyes could be sitting home, and it would all at that point fall on Ryan Day, and Ryan Day is gone. And I've been saying this now for over a year, that the Buckeyes, the reason why they are not where they were before they took over is Ryan Day. The job has gotten too big for him. He falters under the bright lights. He folds like a cheap card table. What the problem is, I don't know. As a Buckeye hater, I don't care. But as a college football watcher, you have to think that Ryan Day might be the linchpin that is going to have everything that Ohio State is built completely fall apart. And now you start to speculate, and the argument then turns to, if you let him go, who's your get? Because they are a top 5 program. A few of the names that have been thrown out is you would promote Chip Kelly from the offensive coordinator. There's talk about former Buckeye great Mike Vrabel, who is now a special assistant in the Cleveland Browns organization. Mike Vrabel's not going to come there because, number one, he's going to get a bigger contract in the NFL after taking a gap year this year. When the Browns season implodes, as they went out and traded Amari Cooper yesterday, when more and more players are dealt, or the Deshaun Watson thing finally blows up in their face this year, and the entire front office and the coaching staff gets released as a result, you're going to probably see Mike Vrabel be offered the opportunity to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, growing up in nearby Akron. Akron is a lot closer to Cleveland than Columbus. And he's shown that he can win at the NFL level. Somebody actually said, well, what about, Urban Meyer coming back? Would never happen. You're not going to lure, somebody like a Kirby Smart, like a Dabo Sweeney, the names I listed before. Those guys are not going to jump from their elite programs to the Buckeyes at this point. And you have to talk about the elephant in the room, that there's a lot of people that say that Ryan Day is very tough to play for. Hence why Kyle McCord didn't even bother after the Michigan loss last year to not only travel with the Buckeyes and play in that game. Actually, let me reverse that. Not even so much play in that game, but even travel with the Buckeyes. Transferred to Syracuse and showed up on the sideline in Syracuse's bowl game. Wanted to be away from that program as fast as humanly possible. And there's got to be the underlying thought of why you lost 26 and brought in 10. So let me know what you guys think. Is Day the problem? Is there something else there? Did they spend too much money on certain key players? Is this too many cooks in the kitchen and one ball to go around, much like a problem that you would have in the NBA? But I will be back with you guys here very, very soon. NBA preview on the Wise Guys Sports Show this weekend. We hope everyone will join us either live or in the on-demand, and I will see you guys very soon. Take care.